All right, everyone, welcome to this episode of Eating Enlightenment. I'm here today with Lula Brown. Hey, Lula.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. I'm so excited. I saw your website. I saw all the really cool people who have left testimonials from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. That was really impressive to me. And knowing that you're able to support yourself living in the Caribbean, I just can feel the energy that you're legit. And so y'all who haven't been introduced to Lula before, she's an integrative nutrition health coach, Reiki practitioner, and writer based in Costa Rica and New York. Lula specializes in intuitive eating. Yep, go intuitive eating. Yeah, custom nutrition and energy management. In her private practice, Lula works with women who want to stop dieting, heal from emotional eating, and restore their natural metabolism. She's contributed to Mind Body Green, Teen Vogue, Huffington Post, among a whole bunch of other media publications. You can find Lula biking the Caribbean coast, trying new restaurants, pole dancing, or studying Romance language in her free time. And this is at lulabrown.com. And Lula's also on Instagram at Lula I Brown. So Lula I Brown. Lula, thanks so much for coming on today. You've been on this journey yourself. You help women stop dieting, heal from emotional eating. And you speak from experience. Can you just share a little bit about the beginning of your journey?
So I'm coming from a very Eastern informed background, but also the first few years of my life, I was eating a pretty narrow diet. So I wasn't exposed to this wide range of food. And for me, with my body, what ended up happening is that as we stopped homeschooling, as I went to public school, as I started getting exposed to like all these different foods I had never seen before, really, like candy and pizza, it was all so new to me and so novel that I really started overeating. So I would eat all these beautiful, nutritious meals at home, and then I would go to Girl Scouts and there would be a pizza there. And I was like, what is this thing with like bread and cheese and pepperoni? And I was not exposed to that stuff early on. So the first part of my journey when I was really young was really overeating and binge eating. And then as I got into my preteen and teen years, I started to become really aware and conscious of my body. So I loved food, I loved eating, but I was also like, and I was pretty naturally thin. So there was definitely some body dysmorphia going on, but I felt like I was too big. So loved food, loved eating, but then as I got into preteen, teen years, I started dieting. I started really restricting myself, and that ultimately led to cycles of restriction, overeating, purging. I wasn't diagnosed with bulimia, but I was making myself purge many times a week from the time I was about 16 years old until finally the last time I purged was like about 7 years ago now. That was a long healing journey. Yeah.
And it's so common. Millions of women, guys, may not be diagnosed with anything official.
Yes.
But they're going through that starting.
Yeah.
How did you get help? How did you begin to heal?
Yeah, so and just to touch on really quickly, because I think it's such an important point, you mentioned how a lot of people have this and they aren't diagnosed. And that's so heartbreaking because it's like, if it's very obvious, if someone's very overweight, if they're purging in a way where like their parents or their roommates can like really notice right away, but most people are really good at hiding it. So it's like there's this whole group of people that kind of are on the eating disorder spectrum and they never get treatment and they never get help because they're not diagnosed, but they really need help.
And I feel that's so true. For me personally, I'm more in the binge eating, just emotional eating, but it's easy to hide.
Yeah, really easy to hide it.
Yeah,
my parents didn't know I was purging when I was 16 years old living at home, and that's not their fault. They're the most incredible parents in the world, but it's easy to hide it.
Yeah, it's easy to hide it from yourself too, like
Yes.
just thinking it's not a problem, or
Yeah.
every now and then, or whatever. It's
Mm,
so easy to like not see it.
yeah.
So did someone notice it? Did someone somehow see that it was different and then they kind of nudged you into getting help, or was it more a self-discovery on your own?
It was really more on my own. So during my senior year in college, I was studying in New York at the New School. I was studying culture and media, food studies. I was always really into health and nutrition from the time I was little. So that was kind of a given. And then I did the health coach training program at IIN during my senior year of college. So I was finishing school and I was doing the health program. I was interning at Teen Vogue and Time Out New York, really awesome internships. So I knew I loved writing and I knew I loved food and nutrition. And then I did the health coach training program, and that was actually my springboard for healing. Because that's
Interesting.
when at IIN, I really got introduced to these like tangible self love practices. Like self love was always in my consciousness, but I started learning about emotional eating and self love and binge eating. And like we said earlier, kind of these issues that are not quite diagnosed eating disorders, but are still a problem. That's stuff that was very much addressed in the IIN curriculum at that time. So I became more aware that I was learning more about holistic healing, self healing coaching. Um, and then I also worked with an IIN coach myself. So
Ah,
I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. I also worked with an amazing woman named Cora Poj. I worked with her for about 3 years. And she is like one of the people who I tribute my healing to the most. Like
ah,
it was a self-led journey. It was IIN. It was learning all of these self-love, self-care practices and becoming more aware of that eating disorder spectrum and really seeing how it was affecting me.
yeah.
And then it was working with Cora that like really helped me heal. I'm so grateful for her.
What did you learn alongside of her? What
Mm,
new thoughts entered your consciousness that you didn't have before? Like, yeah, and maybe what
mm,
did you unlearn too? What
yeah.
did you unlearn? What did you learn
Mm.
new? How did you kind of shift your thinking with this INN teacher of yours that was so powerful?
Yeah, I mean, it was really shifting from like being in a war with food, like me versus food, how can I eat as little as possible, to
Yeah,
kind of really seeing food as nourishment and really devoting myself to my intuitive eating voice and what my body needed.
instead of like controlling,
Exactly.
ripping,
Tight,
managing.
controlling. Yeah. And one of the big things for me in retrospect was like, you know how some people always have their face in like their brow is furrowed or there's some like visible tightness in their face or body? I used to have a little bit of that. And learning to literally relax my body, relax my face
Ah,
in any moment helped me so much with that tightness and that control around food
yeah,
because our
yeah.
posture has a direct effect on the nervous system. If we're always furrowing our brow and kind of worried on a subconscious level, that engages the sympathetic, the stressed fight or flight nervous system state.
And then after you're stressed out, what happens then?
Mm. Yeah, your body releases all these hormones. You're more likely to have digestive issues. You're more likely to hold on to body weight when you're in that stressed nervous system state because the body is just trying to keep you alive. And when the body gets into that state, it considers things like digestion and metabolism like not that important because you're literally in that fight or flight, like as if you were running after someone who was trying to rob you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people overeat, they
Hmm.
mistakenly think that they lost control.
Yeah.
They don't understand what's going on underneath it. And I feel
Mm.
like understanding the relationship between eating and stress and emotional eating is
Hmm.
central to healing.
Yeah.
How would you describe the relationship between stress and eating and posture and
Hmm.
relaxing and listening. And what did you mean by this intuitive eating voice?
Yeah, so your intuitive eating voice, at any moment you can tune in. It can be helpful to like place a hand on your stomach, maybe a hand on your chest, take a few breaths, and it's like, what is my body asking for?
Yeah.
And it's peeling back the layers. So I'm not saying that every single time you ask this question the first time, you're going to get the answer that's most nourishing for you. But it's like, no, what does my body really need? What does my body really need? Because it's like, sometimes it's the pizza, but sometimes there is like an impulse. And there's something on a deeper level that the body really needs to be in alignment and to be nourished. So it is asking, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? At least a few times. And strengthening that trust and intuition muscle over time.
Did you find interesting foods that nourished you that you might not have thought would have nourished you?
Definitely. So I grew up completely dairy-free, and now like cheese is a nourishing part of my diet. Sometimes grass-fed milk is a nourishing part of my diet. Yogurt, yogurt has wonderful probiotics. So those are things that I kind of demonized when I was younger because I just wasn't exposed to them, and they were considered bad by a lot of people who I talk to. And now they're part of my diet, and they feel really good when I eat them in a way that's aligned with my body by listening to my intuition.
How did you start eating these new foods? Oftentimes there's this fear, like,
yeah.
Were you afraid before you started eating dairy? Talk to me, like, how'd you get through that?
I had a ton of fear. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start eating cheese. I'm going to gain 50 pounds. My life is going to be over. And I mean, there's so much here, but it's like we have to separate our body from our value and our self-worth in the world. And I always say, like, we're allowed to feel good in our bodies, and we're even allowed to want to lose weight if it's coming from the right place. A lot of coaches and teachers kind of demonize weight loss. And I see the value in that. Self-love is absolutely crucial. But if you feel heavy in your body, if you feel exhausted and tired, and you just don't feel like yourself, it's not shameful to want to lose weight.
Absolutely.
So I was definitely scared to eat dairy. I had to kind of separate those two things. And then for me in my process, I was very young when I started eating dairy, so I had to take it slow. It was a bit of a mind fuck. Sorry, I don't know if I can.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
It messed with my head a little bit. We can cut that if we need to.
It's cool.
Yeah.
A huge mind fuck.
It was a mind fuck. Like, what is this creamy, delicious substance?
And that fear of weight gain, and how did you kind of separate that?
Well, thank God today we know that actively trying to diet and actively trying to lose weight has been proven over and over again to make you gain more weight. So we don't have to diet anymore. We have to stop dieting if we want our body and our mind to come into alignment. So it's awesome. But the old belief is definitely like we need to control our food to lose weight. So, now we know that dieting doesn't work, thank God.
This is a very nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
Because I really appreciated what you said about weight loss just a second ago, that it's okay to want it.
Yeah.
It's not to be demonized. On one hand, we have this type of thinking, and then the other hand, we have this over preoccupation about weight loss. And you do a pretty good job about talking about it on your website, lulabrown.com. How do you describe this whole weight loss paradox or dilemma or contradictory info, nuance? How do you kind of speak about it?
Yeah. So we have to let go of like this tight, controlled goal to lose weight. And we have to know that in doing so, our body will come into alignment faster and easier. So we have to let go of that, and we have to stop trying to avoid food. So what I used to do is I would try to eat so little and so perfectly all throughout the day. And this is also true for a lot of my clients. I would try to keep my portions really small, only eat specific foods, and then I would binge at night. So
Yeah.
what we talk about, with Activate and with my coaching is like building this foundation of self-love and prioritizing living an incredible life over just trying to lose weight with no real meaning behind it. So a lot of people say, oh, I would wear these great outfits and I would put myself out there with dating, but only once I lose weight. So how can you do those things now? How can you start living the life that you want to live now? Develop these self-love and self-care practices on a daily basis, and then also get the support you need to know what foods are working for your body and how you can shift into this place of nourishment and devotion to yourself and your needs instead of restriction, calorie counting, trying to keep everything small, portions small, your body small. It's like this relax and this expanse and this like trusting yourself.
This trusting yourself.
Yeah,
Coming
it's also
back to
this
your
aspect
body.
of like, fuck diets. Like, do I want to be on a diet my whole life? No.
Yeah.
So what's my
Hell
other
no.
option? It's this. So let me commit to this. Let me devote myself to this.
There is a devotion in there.
Yeah.
There is that old way doesn't work. I am going to feel my body. I am going to learn from my body.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what
Yeah.
makes my body happy, foods and
Yes.
all this stuff.
Yeah, our body is always giving us feedback, It's another big part of intuitive eating is like especially when you're first starting out, it's just really noticing how different foods affect you and how they make you feel. So do you feel tired after certain meals? Do you feel exhausted all the time? It's like the immediate symptoms and then the longer term, more ongoing symptoms. Like what's going on for you? So in my programs, like we do get really detailed with that stuff. So it's like the nutrition coupled with self-love, self-care, learning how to create the life that you think you'll have after you lose weight, doing it now. And then watching the body stuff come into alignment.
It's very interesting. In Zen, they say practice is enlightenment. And to me, that means the means equal the ends.
Yes.
I feel like what you're doing is you're starting with the ends and, like living
Exactly.
your best life, starting that
Yes.
now. Like, don't
Yeah.
diet to do that. Because if you're dieting and going through this, like,
it sucks.
Yeah. Like, if you hate the process, you're going to hate the result. And the result is binge eating.
Yes.
How
So well said.
I want to explore the good taste system, but real quick, which is an interesting thing. We'll talk about just in a little bit, but I guess my question was, how did you unbrainwash yourself, but brainwash yourself like from the dieting beliefs? But I think you kind of mentioned it earlier. You were in the integrative nutrition program. What is integrative nutrition? I've heard of this. Can you describe it real briefly?
So, on a very high level, integrative nutrition is how is your food fueling you and feeding you, but also how are your relationships, career, spirituality, exercise, your life? How are they nourishing you or draining your energy? So if you're in a really stressful job, you're around all day, you're super stressed, you have that physical tension, that pressure cooker effect, like the pressure is building up all day.
Yeah.
And you finally get home from work and you binge. So in that case, it's not really about the food. I mean, it's never just about the food, but that's a prime example where you're really eating for emotional reasons. It's not just because you want food. It's because you're super stressed at work and maybe some changes need to happen in your career. So integrative nutrition, holistic nutrition is all about looking at your life holistically and seeing what's adding energy and what's draining energy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was your biggest energy drain when you first started learning this system?
Yeah, obsessing over my body and weight.
Mm.
Going through in my head what I'd eaten that day, how many calories, whether I would be heavier the next day when I stepped on the scale. For me, it was really that mental piece, Jared, that was draining so much energy from me. Like, it was insane.
And,
Yeah.
we all humans, we have negative thoughts from time to time that we don't always think positive. Sometimes we have a memory or a old thought pattern just pop up, and even though you haven't purged in years, maybe something just randomly pops up, a bad day, didn't sleep much. When those thoughts come up for you right now, what do you do? Like, you're sitting in your car. What do you do?
Well, first, and this is something that I didn't used to do, this is something I've been doing for maybe 5 years. I don't try to avoid the negative thoughts. So for me, those repetitive, obsessive thoughts about like what I ate in that day, all of that, those were different from negative thoughts. Like for me, if a moment of anxiety or sadness comes up, the first thing that I do is I really let myself feel that emotion, and I don't make it wrong. And, there's also a strong aspect of intuition there. It's like, where is this feeling coming from? How much space does it need? It's like sometimes we really need to be with our darker emotions. And other times we can tell they're kind of superficial, and like the best thing to do is get on with our day. So you need to trust your intuition there. But there's totally moments where I just need to be with that feeling and like have a day of like Netflix, or have a personal day where I don't take clients or I don't do writing. So step one is to be with the feeling, to not make it wrong. And further, to even celebrate it. The full human spectrum of emotion is mind-blowing and fucking awesome. Like, we have the ability to feel everything, and we're supposed to feel everything. It's like, oh, I'm feeling this insane emotion. Like, cool. Like, look at my capacity to feel. How beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Before this podcast, there was the Kobe Bryant memorial, and I've always been a Lakers fan.
Yeah,
and Michael Jordan was talking just a couple hours ago or the other day, and tears were streaming down his face, and I was crying so much, and I'm just like this is going into it. This is going into it.
So beautiful. And that's a great example of like, of course you're heartbroken. Of course you should find that feeling and not make it wrong. Whereas like if someone was bumping around depressed because they gained 5 pounds, maybe that emotion is like, doesn't need as much room because it's kind of bullshit. Doesn't matter that much in the bigger picture. How is your energy? What's happening there? It's again that reverse engineering and letting the body stuff come into alignment. So it's like those two different examples, very different.
Yeah, and then circling back to your good taste system, man, just what can you get? I know it's probably like what's the overview of it? Like, kind of, you got your own process, you work with people, but like you kind of mentioned some stuff earlier, but how would you describe it? Good taste system.
The good taste side of my business is really about the fact that I'm a lush. I like to go out to fancy restaurants, and I like to eat rich foods. So the good taste side is really about eating what you want and still feeling great in your body. Yeah. And that's what we go through in my whole program. So, we start with this like, really strong self-love foundation. We do a reset. Your intuitive food voice can get kind of compromised sometimes if you have been like on a serious carb and sugar-based diet. It's hard to know what your body needs. So in most cases, we do a gentle food-based reset at the beginning of the program, and that kind of wipes the slate clean to be able to really listen to your voice around food, really know what your body needs without getting thrown off by like all these processed carbs and sugars that can just make us have superficial cravings that aren't really nourishing our bodies or in alignment with our deeper needs.
Absolutely.
So it's that wiping the slate clean and then easing into intuitive eating from there, versus trying to decipher what your body needs when it's only been getting refined carbs and sugar.
And that part is, I feel, so important. So, sometimes people feel like this intuitive eating journey is like jumping off into the deep end of the pool. They have this fear, like, oh crap, I'm just gonna jump off. Sounds like you give a little bit of structure to your clients.
I do.
At least with the food in the beginning, like
Yeah, I actually do like I have them give me a food journal first of what they've been eating, and then that, and I give a really gentle Nourish reset plan to just help them get back in touch with what their body really needs. And it's done through, like, we're not restricting, we're doing this to deepen that connection. And as, again, your body, your needs, your energy, how you show up in the world, your focus, all doing that reset first makes it much more easy to get into the flow of full intuitive eating.
I love that word you used, connection. I feel like that's the word that stood out to me when I heard about your training. Connection.
Yeah, it's all about connection. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've never seen an intuitive eating coach that had such good copywriting skills. Just kind of changing this topic randomly, but you do Reiki, you do copywriting.
Yeah.
And hearing about your internship at Teen Vogue, it started to click in, like, oh, she's been in this for a while. Like that makes a lot of sense because your voice resonates a certain way on your website. One of the reasons I was excited to talk to you today.
Thank you.
And just kind of curious about it. Like, what was that experience like at Teen Vogue and learning copywriting?
Yeah. So working at Teen Vogue was amazing. Interning at Teen Vogue was amazing. I got to work with Eva Chen, who was the beauty editor at that time. She went on to head up Lucky magazine. Now she does fashion at Instagram. And she was like, one of the first, really established people to tell me, like, you're a great writer, and to really give me that confidence and validation that I needed as a teenager practically. I was like 19, 20, 21 when I was there. So that was so affirming for me. And I had always loved writing. When I was in 6th grade, my English teacher would help me, have me help other students with their essays, things like that. So for me, my coaching and Reiki and writing are very intertwined. Like coaching and Reiki are the one-to-one client side of my practice. And then helping other people, other wellness entrepreneurs get their message out there through writing is so fun for me.
We'll talk later.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Reiki, I've had a Reiki session done to me years ago. Can you tie together Reiki and healing from emotional eating? Because it seems like they're two separate systems. Reiki, but maybe they're not. Yeah, exactly. Because Reiki, like, your hands going over your body, and someone might wonder, like, how is that supposed to stop someone from eating?
Yeah.
How does Reiki and emotional eating relate?
Totally. So I do hands-on Reiki, actually on the body. And the principle behind Reiki is that it's just universal life force moving through your hand. And some of my clients have described it like my hands feel like hot stones on them. So it's very soothing, very relaxing. And what Reiki does is it brings your body into that relaxed nervous system state. That parasympathetic rest and digest state where your body can really repair and upgrade rather than just being in survival mode. And when you're emotional eating, binge eating, when you're on these cycles, like when you have a binge, your nervous system is going into the stress state because it's getting so many calories at once and it's getting so stimulated and overworked. So Reiki really resets the body. It brings you into that relaxed nervous system state. And in doing so, it really improves your relationship with your intuition and your food voice.
Interesting. Sounds like you're saying you have to, or it really helps if you're in the parasympathetic, you're relaxed to listen to that voice.
It's everything.
If I were really stressed out, how would you coach me to relax?
I mean, something you could do along the lines of Reiki. Traditional Reiki is passed down from a teacher. So you do have to go through Reiki level 1 to officially be practicing Reiki. But energy is always moving through anyone. So I don't want to say this is Reiki, but a great soothing practice is to just put your hands on your chest, or it could be your lower belly, and just slow down your breath. Just start counting to 6 on the inhale, 6 on the exhale. And just feeling your physicality, feeling the warmth of your hands, feeling how fast or slow your heart is beating, whatever is going on there really helps you to come back to that kind of state of devotion and alignment and nourishment.
I love it. I love it. So like the words you're using with like are so good because I did this whole yoga thing first. Like I'm really big into yoga, and this intuitive eating field drew me in.
Yeah.
It's so similar to yoga, like the way you're describing devotion and the soothingness of relaxing. I really like that energy, I guess, you bring to this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I've mentioned a little bit about your website, lulabrown.com. You give like a bunch of free resources away on your website, right? You got like a five-step training. Tell me, where can people contact you, and what have you got going on where they can contact you?
Yeah, for sure. So yes, lulabrown.com, LULABROWN. And right now I have a 5-step system to get rid of bloating without giving up your favorite food. So that's a great free resource that people can grab right away. Helps you enter that calm nervous system state and just feel a lot more stable and relaxed in your body right away. And then my favorite social media is Instagram. And like you said at the beginning, it's Lula I Brown. On Instagram.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It was a really fun conversation.